This is a circle. Or is it? If you're at all into the world of retro gaming, you've likely encountered someone who's told you that you need to play games a certain way because it was the developer's intent. This might include using a particular kind of display, video signal, or even aspect ratio. But who's the developer? There's loads of staff members involved with the creation of almost any game. Whose intent are we on about? Today I'm going to have a look at some of the most common arguments you might hear around developer intent and see if you really need to be bothered. Spoiler, you probably don't. Something you'll often hear when it comes to playing retro games is that they were designed with CRTs in mind. While this isn't wrong, the argument gives the impression that there were other kinds of displays available, but back then, CRTs were the standard, and it's what just about every house on the planet used. For some people, the softness of a CRT combined with scanlines is a key part of the retro look, and the idea of having sharp pixels is abhorrent to them. I've heard such pretentious bollocks as someone describing a CRT screen as a canvas that the artist painted onto. Yeah, I'm sure the person who designed the graphics for Bubble Bath Babes had nothing but their artistic integrity in mind. Does this idea also extend to handheld systems like the Game Gear with its blurry, washed-out screen? There wasn't an official way for consumers to play these games on a TV, so surely playing them on this shite screen is the developer's intent. It's just that I can't really see much of what they developed. Some games for the Game Boy used flickering combined with the screen's low refresh rate to fake intermediate shades, so were almost certainly designed with that display in mind. Does that mean that playing these games on the official Nintendo-designed Super Game Boy goes against the developer's intent? All I know is that I can see the game, but I'm not sure if I'm happy about it. The topic of aspect ratio is an endless source of headache fuel. Now, I'm sure we all know someone who stretches a 4:3 image to 16:9. Maybe it's because they want to use the whole display that they paid for, or it might not be something that they even think about. I've got no problem with saying that stretching in this way definitely isn't in line with the developer's intent, but I'm also not going to be an arsehole to someone because of it. Well, maybe a little bit. Where things get even more complicated is around the subject of pixel aspect ratios. Remember the circle I drew earlier? If you display it using square pixels, then yes, it is a perfect circle. However, most consoles of the era didn't use square pixels. If you were to display this circle on an NES, it would be horizontally stretched. If you displayed it using the Mega Drive's most common resolution, the circle would be horizontally squished. This led to the Great Moon War of 2021, where people argued that the developer's intended aspect ratio could be defined by any circular objects within the game. If you play Sonic 1 using square pixels, the loops and Sonic himself are perfectly round. Likewise, in Castlevania Dracula X, square pixels gives you a nice circular moon. But if you hook both of these consoles up to a 4:3 CRT, all roundness goes out the window. Things get even more complex when you look at cross-platform ports of games like Earthworm Jim. On one console, he's squashed, and on the other, he's stretched. Which is correct? More importantly, did the developers really care? My opinion on this is that most art programs have a simple function that lets the artist draw a perfect circle. In A-Sprite here, I just need to hold shift. While it's not impossible, I don't think it's reasonable to expect every artist tasked with creating a circular object to double-check them on the intended display. Back in 1994, Super Metroid was only ever going to be displayed on a 4:3 CRT, so whether or not the artists wanted Samus's morph ball to look perfectly circular really didn't matter. So we've been told what display we need to use due to developer intent, but we've also been told that this display may not always reflect the aspect ratio intended or used by the pixel artists. If we want to add more useless confusion, why don't we throw video signals into the mix as well? Retro consoles were usually capable of outputting one or more types of video signal, ranging from, in order of quality, RF to CVBS, known as composite, to S-video, to YPBPR, known as component, and finally RGB. I live in England, in case you couldn't tell, so I was lucky enough to have easy access to RGB SCART cables for most of my consoles. Outside of Europe, SCART was practically non-existent, with RF and composite being the most common signal types accepted by TVs when it came to retro consoles. When discussing developer intent, especially for consoles like the Mega Drive and PlayStation, you'll often hear someone say that composite was the intended way to display these games. Well, before I even go any further with this, can I just point out that the PAL PlayStation 1 manual advises that you can improve picture quality by using an RGB SCART cable, and the NTSC manual advises that you can use an S-video cable. Why would Sony suggest using a better video signal if it goes against the developer's intent? Why would consoles even offer higher quality signals in the first place? Composite isn't a clean video signal, and depending on the console, it can be especially blurry. Many argue that composite was used to blend away the dithering seen in PlayStation games like Silent Hill and Metal Gear Solid. Now it does help reduce it, but I can still see dithering here on Snake. Another Konami game that's often used as an example of composite's greatness is Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Well, not all of the game. In fact, it's just this one 46x70 pixel portrait here. You see how Dracula's eyes kinda get blended across the screen into a creepy glow? I'm not going to deny it's an interesting effect. However, this is used as an example of artist intent. Well, who is the artist in this case? In Ayami Kojima's original artwork, which was shrunk down for the portrait, Dracula's eyes are piercing, but they don't have any kind of glow to them. Instead, they're just a reddish-orange colour. Who was responsible for shrinking down the image? Was their intention to have the eyes blur horizontally, or to stand out and be just as piercing as the original artwork? I honestly don't know. The Mega Drive is notorious for its especially shite composite video quality, and there are interviews from developers that confirm that certain games use dithering or colour combinations that, when displayed through composite, created intermediate shades. Unfortunately, my Mega Drive doesn't output composite video, so the closest I can get is via the composite blend option on the Mister. But I think it's enough to give you the idea of what we would be looking for. In games from USA-based developers, where composite was the best signal that TVs could accept from the Mega Drive, the intention is fairly evident, as they used vertical lines that would be horizontally blurred by the composite signal. When it comes to Japanese-developed games, the two most popular examples of composite blending effects are the transparent waterfalls in Sonic 1 and the light shafts in the bar in Streets of Rage 2. Here's the thing. Yes, I can see that these things are transparent, and I can also understand that in these particular games, this was the developer intent. But these two simple effects come at the expense of everything else on screen. And this, for me, is where I realised that I really don't care about developer intent, if anything was really intended. We disregard creators' intent every single day without much thought. Whenever you listen to Spotify on your phone while you're washing your arsehole in the shower, or when you're blasting out tunes in your car with the bass maxed out, you're not ingesting that content in the way that the artist intended. Does that stop you from enjoying it any less? Have you ever watched a film on anything other than a giant cinema screen with surround sound blowing your nipples off? Chances are you might not be watching the movie in a way that the creator intended. If you so much as look at the Mona Lisa under electric lights, you're looking at it in a way that the artist didn't even consider possible. The thing about art is that once you release it to the public, you lose a lot of control over how it's interpreted. One of the most amazing things about art is that it can be interpreted and experienced in so many different ways by its audience. Wouldn't it be a lot less fun if people berated you for not experiencing it in a way that the artist apparently wanted? If playing Sonic 1 in RGB with vibrant and clear visuals makes me happy and enhances my enjoyment of the game, why should that be of any concern to anyone else? Whether that's the developer or some rando off the internet. Would you prefer that I enjoy it less? Likewise, if you're more partial to the way that Castlevania looks over composite and find its blending effects and artifacts pleasing to your eye, I'm happy for you. This is something that's supposed to bring joy and grow communities of like-minded people. When you start telling others that your way is the best way to experience something and hide behind something so nebulous as developer intent to try and justify your opinion, you end up alienating people who just want to have fun. I also find it interesting that well-received games are always used as proof of developer intent, which suggests a hint of bias to me. You don't tend to hear anyone talking about how the artists who worked on Bebe's Kids took the time to accommodate the blending effects of composite on a CRT when delivering their work to the masses. Can you really say that the artists for Bubsy considered how their graphics would be displayed any less than the artists for Alicia Dragoon? Maybe we're all taking this a bit too seriously. Hey, thanks so much for watching this video. Let me know what you think. Do you like to play on a CRT? Do you like sharp pixels? Do you like composite? Do you like... I don't know. Tell me what you like down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please consider doing us a like, maybe even a subscribe. And you can also touch my bell, should you wish. But that's it from me today, so take care and goodbye.